What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Dalton, Wasserman, Trevor, Sikkema here with you guys to recap what was the Super Bowl last night. Congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks, champions of the football world, 29-13 as a final score. Dalton, it was a fun game to watch, such, I think, a great defensive matchup between these two teams. I think some people might look at the game overall and go, man, this wasn't a very fun game for three quarters, although we were sweating the over-under there at the end, with the over-under being 45.5, and we actually were kind of getting to that point where that almost was the reality. But, man, just let's start by talking about Seattle and the unbelievable job that they have done. It feels like over the last 3 months specifically, where I think they have proven that they were the best team in the NFL this season. And I think their game plan, their execution, I know it wasn't the best offensive day, like from Sam Darnold in the passing game and things like that. But, brother, what Mike Macdonald was able to do with this team and what John Schneider has done as their general manager to put this roster together, it was unbelievable to watch it manifest and to have so much success last night.
Starting with the game last night, look, Seattle feels like, and I think we can pretty much agree on at this point, they're the best defense in football.
No
right?
question.
They fly
no
around.
Question at this point.
They fly around. They're great at all three levels. Mike Macdonald creates pressure, maybe better than any coach in the league right now. And you look at last night, one number sticks out to me. The Patriots had 83 net yards in the first three quarters of this game. I mean, obviously some of the numbers look a lot more even. Like when you look at the offensive numbers in this game at the end of it, they look just about identical for both teams, but that was really not the case. A bloated fourth quarter for New England as they're trying to come back and just sling it downfield and get back in it. But to go into a Super Bowl in the first three quarters and give up 83 yards and no points, and New England in that time only crossed midfield once in the first quarter, Macdonald built such a balanced, well-rounded defense that dominated basically everybody they played this year except for the Rams, and that was with, honestly, the best quarterback in football this year, the MVP, Matthew Stafford. And even him, especially when you get into third down against the Seattle defense, Stafford did not complete a pass on third down in the NFC title game. And Drake May was absolutely lost in this game with the well-timed pressure looks, with the zone rotations, with everything that goes on in the back end. I think that really was the theme of this game for me, is that Seattle, when you're playing this defense, you need a wily veteran like Matt Stafford, obviously the arm talent and everything, but you need somebody who can see the entire field in 2.5 seconds. Drake May was just a little bit too young to beat this defense.
I agree, and I think that we'll get into the Drake May conversation a little bit more in a second, but when it comes to like stats that told the story, I think there are a lot of stats that truly told the story of this game. And to be honest, we talked a lot of them about some of them as best bets and favorite bets that we had going into this game. For example, Ramondre Stevenson, his over-under going into this game was 49.5 or 50.5, kind of depending on when you got it. He finishes this game with 7 total attempts and 23 rushing yards. To me, the 7 attempts almost tells the whole story of the game, because it goes into the fact that they were never able to really play the way that they wanted to on offense. They had so few rushes, they had so few rushing yards because the game script the entire time, even though it was close for those first 2.5 quarters, it just felt like nothing was going for them on the ground. And Seattle was just doing too good of a job defending the run. It was forcing them into passing situations. And then another stat that told the story, Drake May was pressured on over 1/3 of his dropbacks in the game, and he had a 36.5 passing grade under pressure. When we were doing the live stream last night, we talked about this a little bit, and I mentioned how basically up until those last 2 drives of the game, which Seattle's playing defense a little bit differently when you get to those last 2 drives. They're up. It's basically just, hey, do not let the catastrophic happen to you. So the defense is a lot softer just in general, but May in those final 2 drives of the game, hey, checking it down to the running backs, throwing it to the tight ends here, a little out route, okay, a little slant route here. Like Drake May was actually willing to take those smaller throws, and unfortunately, where it is an accomplishment worthy of praise to say that Drake May was the second youngest quarterback to ever start a Super Bowl behind Dan Marino, that is also exactly how the game played out, because May wanted to win the whole Super Bowl with one throw throughout the first 3 quarters of that game. He continued to look deep. I mean, the scoreboard wasn't as bad. Seattle was controlling that entire game, but you think about the scoreboard. 3-0, 6-0, 9-0, 12-0. You're not that far out of it. Things can change in an instant, sort of like we saw with the Matt Collins touchdown. New England had nothing going all game, and all of a sudden, boom, two throws, and they score a touchdown right there. But it was Drake May's inability to trust his playmakers, I think, in this game that really got in the way and leaned right into what Mike Macdonald and this defense wanted to do. They looked at Drake May's pressure to sack ratio, his time to throw average, specifically against those zone coverages that the Seattle Seahawks did so much throughout the postseason, where it was a lot of cover six, a lot of quarters, where you're playing that off coverage. Drake May's time to throw against those zone coverage shells, which Seattle runs a lot of, over 3 seconds easily. So Mike Macdonald, to your point, and the pressure point, and the third down point, he saw that pressure to sack ratio over 40% from Drake May this season. And he built the whole defensive game plan around it. And he said, until you prove to me that you will get rid of the ball quickly in a way that damages us with these dink and dunk plays with good yards after the catch, I'm going to keep doing it. And Mike Macdonald did that from the first kickoff all the way to the very last play of the game. And I think that it's just it is a kudos to him and his team of having a fantastic game plan to really put a young but talented quarterback in a really tough situation all night.
No, I agree. I mean, when you look to, and I think if you were to ask me, what does Seattle do best on their defense? What is the number one thing that defines their defense? And because there could be a lot. It could be the team speed. It could be the schemes and pressure from Mike Macdonald. The big thing to me is they're the best team in football at preventing explosive plays. Seattle in the first 3 quarters on offense, 9 explosive plays. New England, just 2. One run and 1 pass. And the 1 pass was in the first quarter with, I believe it was their first drive of the game. When you look at Seattle for the season, lowest explosive run rate allowed in the NFL. The New England's running backs, Stevenson and Henderson, did not have an explosive run in this game.
Yeah.
Right? Third lowest explosive pass rate allowed, and that's with playing the LA Rams 3 times. So I'm sure, I didn't look at it, but I'm sure if I took out the Rams games, it's probably the lowest in many different ways. Because it's not just, sit back and keep a lid on it, right? We're going to sit in quarters the whole game and just not let you. It's the pressure. It's the simulated pressures. Yeah. It's speeding up a quarterback. It's slowing down a quarterback at times. It's playing too high. It's playing man coverage because you have the athletes to do that. That's the key right there. And New England, look, out of both of these offenses, we have seen it where were they the most consistent offenses in football? Not necessarily, but they were almost always explosive when they needed to be. New England ran into a wall where they just could not create any of those explosive plays. Because the only team that really consistently did it against Seattle all year was the Rams, and that was the most explosive offense in football this year. So New England, again, younger quarterback dealing with so much that Mike Macdonald throws at him. And when you can't create explosive plays, and I think there's a part of this that falls a bit on Josh McDaniels too, right? Where to me, it should have been more of a callback to the last time New England and Seattle played. Because when you go back and look at that game from Tom Brady, I think his average depth of target might have been like 5 yards. Mm-hmm. I forget the exact number. It was right around like 5 yards in that game. It was checkdowns. It was yards after the catch. It was just, okay, we just have to let the athletes be the athletes. It wasn't that one when New England came back in that game. That was not Tom Brady slinging it down the field.
Right.
That game was won by New England 4 and 5 yards at a time.
Yes.
The refusal to do that, we talked about it in the preview. Getting heavy with 12 personnel, with 21 personnel, with Jack Westover at fullback, that wasn't going to work on this Seattle team. They don't care. They're not going to match and get heavy. They leave the same 11 guys out there because Nicky Manwari at that linebacker level is the freak that he is. They don't need to change personnel. They're either light or lighter. They're not going to get heavy with you and give you those shots like so many other teams do, and they match personnel. So I think there's so many things to learn from Seattle's season schematically, with the way that Mike Macdonald built his defense with a guy like Eamon and We've seen it in Baltimore with Kyle Hamilton. We see it in L.A. with Derwin James. More and more teams are going to start valuing linebackers and safeties because these are the players that have made Seattle's defense what it is
versatile
now.
Ones.
Yes.
Ones that don't make you change personnel, right? I mean, I was talking about somebody just to talk a little bit about the 2026 NFL draft. Kyle Lewis, the linebacker from Pittsburgh, is somebody who really intrigues me because, adjacent to watching the Seahawks every single week, I look at this player and I go, all right, you're a little bit lighter as a linebacker, but you've got so much speed. you might be a player who you don't have to take off the field in certain situations if he ascends to being really reliable in the areas that you need him to be reliable. But to your point, I think that you're right. A lot of people are going to look at what Mike Macdonald is doing and saying, how do we replicate that? Now, it's tough, right? Because Devin Witherspoon doesn't come around very often. And Nicky Manwari doesn't come around very often.
You still need great players at all three levels.
You do. There's no doubt. And speaking of all three levels, I think the power of Seattle's defensive line was an underrated storyline in this game. And, we're still, our data team is still doing some of the grades and making sure that they're finalized and everything. But you look at the Patriots' run blocking grade. I know people are going to sit here and they're going to want to talk about, Will Campbell and Jared Wilson giving up some pressures. And obviously we talked about how those pressures really affected Drake May. Obviously that was a big storyline in the game. But another big storyline that I think is an underrated one is right now, and this is, again, still initial grades here, but 41.0 team run blocking grade from the Patriots. And that's because they were not able to move this Seattle defensive line. Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence, Jaron Reed. These are powerful dudes. You are drafting and prioritizing strength on the D-line. And then you throw in, Boye Mafe, Derek Hall, Uchenna Nwosu. Those guys are sort of the change-up pitches for you to be a little bit better in pass rushing. But those guys winning and setting the tone with power, holding the line of scrimmage, forcing every run to the outside while you had speed players like Manwari, like Devin Witherspoon, like the safeties coming down and really being able to help in run defense. It's just such again, man, John Schneider is a Hall of Fame general manager. I think he is a Hall of Fame general manager for what he did to build that Legion of Boom team that won a Super Bowl, could have very well and probably should have very well won a second Super Bowl in that era. And then to completely rebuild the team in a brand new way to this caliber again. You look at the last 4 drafts that John Schneider's had since 2022, I'm not sure a general manager has ever had a better 4-year run at GM. And when you combine that with how they moved on from Russell Wilson, how they moved on from Geno Smith, some of the guys that they acquired near the trade deadline, some of the guys that they acquired this past offseason, all of that combined is just such a job well done. And for as much as we talk about, I think, a lot of the maybe more flashier positions, the power of the Seahawks defensive line, to me, really set the tone last night. And again, it made it so they could not run the football. They had to put the ball in Drake May's hands more, and it all just went right into what Mike Macdonald's game plan
And
was.
as far as Schneider goes, and I'm gonna get into another team building kind of rant here in a second, but as far as Schneider goes, just to get the opportunity to do it really in a third window here, right? Because you talk about, okay, how many GMs would have been let go when they traded Russell Wilson just to clean house and start over, right?
Maybe, yeah.
Then you have a pretty solid 3-year run with Geno Smith, okay? But 10-7, missed the playoffs last year. How many GMs would have been let go this previous offseason just to go, all right, let's clean house and get out of here? Now he's on a championship run with year 1 of Sam Darnold, right? And you're looking at a guy who's been able and allowed to build a team multiple times and continue. He has this vision, right? And again, Seattle was good with Geno Smith. And to have the guts to trade Geno and to trade DK Metcalf and let Tyler Lockett go and so much turnover we saw, and to fire Ryan Grubb, the OC, after 1 year to go get Clint Kubiak and go get Sam Darnold. It takes that's some bravery right there to make. Those are big franchise altering moves.
For sure.
And yet there was a vision that they could win a championship in this way. And now I think, for me, the big lesson moving forward coming out of last night's game, and I think to me this goes back to the Eagles' run last year. We got so used to Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And maybe a couple other quarterbacks mixed in there. They got hot, or you have the elite quarterbacks that carried their team to a Super Bowl.
Right.
But we have to remember, a lot of those New England and Kansas City teams, really good, well-rounded football teams with a lot of other great players, right? Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Chris Jones, right? Trent McDuffie of New England, and then the mountain of borderline Hall of Famers they had throughout the years, and then Bill Belichick always building the defense. These two teams with Jalen Hurts and Sam Darnold, who many don't consider to be elite quarterbacks because there's generally thought to be 4 of them, right? It's the big 4. They were the most well-rounded teams in football. They were the best defense in football by the end of the year. Both of them very similar arcs, right? Figuring it out at the beginning of the year. From week 6 onward, both of them only lost 1 game the rest of the year, and a nail biter, right? That's the craziest thing with Seattle is you think about, well, they're the Seahawks and they have Sam Darnold and they don't have all the household names. They've lost 1 game since week 6. And that was, of course, to the Rams, and then they beat them. They came back and beat them twice. I think when it comes to team building, the teams that do have those elite quarterbacks, right? You're not going to win a trophy if you have Joe Burrow and the worst defense in football. You're not going to win a trophy if you have Josh Allen but a bottom 5 defense in football. You're not going to win a trophy if you're Patrick Mahomes, but if you have Patrick Mahomes and you can't run the football at all. These teams are balanced. They're great and explosive on offense. They have the best defense in football. Now, is it easy to have the best defense in football? No, but you should be able to build yourself a top 7 or 8 unit. Even Seattle and the emphasis they put on special teams, credit to Jay Harbaugh and what he did with that unit. I would argue they were the most well-rounded, best special teams unit all year, and you saw that in this Super Bowl as well. GMs and teams need to go into the offseason, and they can't just go, okay, well, we have to surround our quarterback. Sure. You got to build a well-rounded football team. These last 2 teams, to me, that won the Super Bowl, the Eagles last year and Seattle this year, embodied having the best team in football, right? In a modern way, too. Like Mike McDonald with his defense, like you mentioned, Clint Kubiak coming in, putting in the zone schemes and finding ways to create explosive plays even when things weren't necessarily ideal. It can be done, right? It can be done without Patrick Mahomes. You can win a Super Bowl without Patrick Mahomes. You just have to build it the right way, and you have to build a well-rounded football team. I think, to me, if I'm a GM of the other 30 franchises, I'm looking at Philly and I'm looking at Seattle and going, how did they build this entire thing?
For sure. Yeah, and I think, you talk about building a team. Trenches, obviously, I mentioned the power and how well-rounded they were on the defensive line. Abraham Lucas, Gray Zabel, Charles Cross, a couple of the highest graded players that we had in the game on Seattle's offensive side of things as well. So, I think it's, to your point, Jackson Smith-Njigba was barely anything in this game.
30 yards, was
right?
it?
Jackson Smith-Njigba had 10 targets, 4 catches, 27 yards. 16 of them came on 1 play.
Yep.
If I told you before the game, Jackson Smith-Njigba has 27 yards, I think a lot of people would have gone, uh-oh, okay. Well, if that's the case, then so the line for this game was 4.5, right? Seattle was favored by 4.5. If I told everybody before the game that Jackson Smith-Njigba was going to have 27 total receiving yards, I think almost everybody would have been like, yeah, all right, give me the Patriots and the points, because at least it's going to be incredibly close. And to your point, Jackson Smith-Njigba was not a factor in this game like he has been for them throughout the entire season. And yet, they were still able to showcase that they were the best team in the NFL from start to finish.
And I think here's another lesson in the team building side of it to me, because I think so much of it is this. Last year, Philadelphia, first in the league in run rate. They were the only team in football to run more than they threw last year. Seattle, this year, second in the league, just barely behind Baltimore in run rate. 47, a little over 47%. The premium positions, rightfully, I get it, are thought to be what? Quarterback, of course, and that still should be. Wide receiver, offensive tackle, defensive end, and maybe cornerback thrown in there, right? All of the passing, all the flashy pass-heavy positions, right? And yet the teams that are running the ball and stopping the run and still playing well in the trenches are the ones winning Super Bowls, right? Because they force you to throw it when you don't necessarily want to, or they force you to throw it in bad situations. How many times last night? 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12, and New England just couldn't dig their way out of that hole against this defense. I think there just needs to be, for years now, there's been this imbalance, whether it be salaries, draft value, all of that. There's been this imbalance of, well, you got to take these positions. They're just more valuable. There's numbers behind it, sure, and war numbers and things like that. But I think there was a discredit to, say, an offensive guard that Seattle took in the first round in Gray Zabel, or I'll call him a linebacker with the role that he plays, like Nicky Manwarrior. We got a lot of good linebackers in this draft class coming up. Look, the last 2 teams that won the Super Bowl, great linebacker units. They're great at that second level. Safeties, there's going to be a big debate about Caleb Downs and how high he should go, and is he the best player in the draft? Personally, I think you can make an easy argument he's the best football player in the draft, and then people go, well, he's going to drop to 15 because he's a safety. And I go, I don't care. Or with Eamon Warry, figure it out. With Kyle Hamilton, with Derwin James, with Jesse Bates, these other positions that people think of as kind of the second tier, the second-rate positions, those are the ones that have won these teams. Defensive tackles. How much more do edge players have to get paid than defensive tackles before we figure out, those guys on the inside are pretty valuable too?
Right.
And not just the Aaron Donalds and Chris Joneses that rush the passer. You mentioned it. The power up front. The Byron Murphys of the world. Also a first-round pick, right?
It matters.
Think about
it all goes into it.
All those players. And yes, Smith and Jigba was one a few years ago, but think about the last couple years, what they're spending draft capital on. Guard, safety, D-tackle.
Corner,
right? And building more depth, not just, Devin Witherspoon, but continue to build depth at corner because you need as many as possible to play light in the box like that. I just think these two teams that we've seen win the Super Bowl the last 2 years, that's how you build football teams. It's why Howie Roseman and John Schneider are maybe the two best GMs in the league right now.
Feels like it.
And I think you really philosophically, and I don't even care if you have the elite quarterback. Even if you're the Bengals or the Bills or whoever trying to win a championship with one of those guys, you got to build it right.
Right.
And I think just around that's really been the fault. It's not that they're not good enough to win Super Bowls. I think there's probably, at this point, Jalen Hurts and Sam Darnold have proven there's probably right now 12 or 13 quarterbacks capable of winning. If Dallas built the rest of their team, especially defensively, like this, Dak Prescott's capable of winning a Super Bowl.
I agree.
You just have to build the rest of the team right. We got to get out of this quarterback-centric, that's the only part that matters. There's certain games where that's true.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to build a championship team, playing 20 games, 20 games in a season, you better have a complete football team and know how to win multiple ways.
All right, so those are some big overall thoughts there from us, and we'll give some specific shout-outs to players here in a second. We haven't even mentioned the Super Bowl MVP yet. We haven't even talked about Kenneth Walker yet. We'll talk about him, and we'll shout out a couple of other players that we were impressed or disappointed with throughout that game. But before we get to that, our game plan of the week presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. Dalton, I think the game plan of the week for this game in the Super Bowl was simply what Mike Macdonald was able to do, blitzing and making Drake May uncomfortable. There were so many times in this game where the heavy blitz left guys open underneath and in the short parts of the field, and Drake May he didn't want it. And Mike Macdonald said, okay, I will give you these all night long until you prove that you are willing to go Tom Brady with it, like you mentioned, and dink and dunk us down the field, because I don't think you are willing to do that. Drake May was not. They only continued to be aggressive from start to finish. It was an excellent game plan of how aggressive they were when they were blitzing and what they did when they were blitzing. Just like every team win, Super Bowl win, starts with a great game plan, your future should as well. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect you and your family so you can focus on winning today, knowing that tomorrow is covered. Whether you are just starting out, building your dynasty, or looking to lock in long-term protection, their coverage options are designed to match your game plan. Visit westernsouthern.com/PFF to get your free life quote and start building your financial game plan today. Western and Southern, built to win, backed by over 130 years of helping people protect what matters most. First individual shout-out I'll give is to the Super Bowl MVP. We got to talk about Kenneth Walker, who had an incredible game. Incredible, honestly, postseason for him. Over 100 yards, I think, in each of the last 3 games that he played, and pretty good time to hit free agency for him, I will say. You feel like he's going to be back as a Seattle Seahawk. I feel like he could be as well as the team with the 6th most effective cap space in the NFL. But he was 27 attempts, 135 rushing yards. Also added 2 receptions and 26 receiving yards on that total as well. It was great to just see Kenneth Walker playing as confidently as he has throughout the postseason, because I remember scouting him, and he is just such a unique combination of just build, strength, and yet that explosiveness and that speed from him, especially when he is rushing behind those zone blocking concepts, even if it's just inside zone or split zone concepts. When you give him a second to see that daylight, the way he could put his foot in the ground and get upfield and do so with a ton of momentum to bounce off a contact, we saw it at its best throughout this postseason. It was obviously the Patriots fans, and the Patriots don't agree with this, but as a neutral fan of the game, wanting to see good football, it was awesome to see a very talented player play very well last night.
Absolutely, especially on the ground, and that was a big question, is how much was Seattle going to be able to run the ball, and they've gotten better at it, more efficient at it as the season has gone on, as their young offensive line has really started to gel. We mentioned it. Gray Zabel's gotten better. He played his best football the last month of the season and into the playoffs. Jalen Sundell, the starting center, his former North Dakota State teammate, deserves a lot of credit, right? Charles Cross and Abe Lucas finally got a year where both of them were healthy at the same time, and look what it set up for their offense. So I think when you look at Walker, 25 years old, going into free agency, and actually a pretty good running back free agent class compared to a draft class that we feel like might only have one impact player that might go in the top 10, Kenneth Walker is going to be a priority in free agency for either Seattle or somebody else. I think Breece Hall, that's the case. Javonte Williams, that could be the case, right? I think running backs are making a bit of a comeback because, again, the last 2 years, we have seen it. Teams that can run the football and have balance, those are the ones winning championships. So I think Seattle is probably going to make him their number one priority in free agency. It just makes too much sense, to bring him back and have that balance in your offense and not then put all that pressure on Sam Darnold to have to win games for you and carry you every single week. But outstanding performance, really, especially when he could bounce to the outside, which is really where New England struggles a little bit more to defend the run. He was terrific. 6 explosive runs on the night. And just you mentioned the combination of speed and power. He really is everything you want in a running back.
To give some Patriots players some love here, I thought Christian Gonzalez was unbelievable in this game. Came up in the big moments, just covered, I think, wire to wire very, very well. He showed up when his team really needed him. He covered any wide receiver that he was asked to. And, we were watching the game, and there were points throughout the game where, okay, there's pre-snap motion here. You're trying to see, is it man, is it zone? And, on a couple of these, all right, Gonzo's following his wide receiver from one side of the field to the other, and then they snap the football and they go, wait a second, you're all in zone. And he's in man. He was playing like the box and one basketball strategy where everybody else is playing zone, but they match up Gonzo with the best wide receiver on the other team, and he's so good, man. I think if the Patriots won, he would have had a case for MVP. He did a great job. Loved the play from the safeties as well. Thought Jalen Hawkins played well, specifically, though, how Craig Woodson played and just how on fire he was and how aggressive he was, making tackles at the line of scrimmage in the backfield. I mean, making that big coverage play on Cooper Kupp at the front pylon. I just thought Craig Woodson was awesome, and it's been a great year for him as a rookie safety to step in and play really well. But I thought he had a fantastic game as well. We've given some shout-outs to Nicky Manwari and Devon Witherspoon as well. I thought Josh Jobe had a nice game. I don't know what his overall PFF grade is going to be after watching every single snap, but felt like some big moments. Jobe was also playing really aggressive in this one, and it was fun to see. So anybody else? Any other names that you want to shout out here?
I mean, I think for me, Seattle's just so well-rounded. I look at even with the initial grades and some of the guys who are near the top. I think about a Kobe Bryant, who feels like never gets talked about back there at free safety, but he's such a valuable piece. And a guy they drafted as a corner, a Jim Thorpe winning corner. Well, there was some debates about that at the time, and he moves to safety. And he fits right in this defense. A guy like Abe Lucas, who finally had a full healthy season, and he was outstanding, right? Josh Jobe, like you mentioned. A.J. Barner, we've talked all year about how valuable he is to this offense when they want to get heavy, and then obviously the big play-action touchdown that, to me, really put the game away. I mean, that, to me, is the theme with this Seattle team is every single week they win ball games. It felt like somebody different, right? The NFC title game, that was the Sam Darnold game. That's the Sam Darnold legacy game. Smith and Jigba all year. Some weeks it's Barner, Rashid Shaheed, every 15 guys, 15 different good players on defense that can beat you any given week. I think that really is it. This was such a team effort of a championship run. And if Seattle, because to me, as far as the roster goes, and all the talk now is going to be how far can they go next year, the roster is going to be fine. I think especially if they do re-sign Kenneth Walker. The biggest question going into the offseason for Seattle is now, okay, who replaces Clint Kubiak? Yeah. Because Clint Kubiak was such a big part of this run too. Obviously, the chemistry with Darnold, creating the explosive plays and the system that he runs, that Shanahan-esque system, right? How are they going to replace their offensive coordinator is really the biggest question in Seattle for me. But there's so many names I think obviously we have called out and we could continue to call out and just keep running down the list, even down to special teams and guys in the third phase that were outstanding last night and all year. Again, just
third phase, your boy Jason Myers. And Dickinson was great.
Jason Myers hit all 7 of his kicks.
He did.
Should have won MVP. And Michael Dixon, how about pinning?
He was awesome. Dixon was awesome.
Highest graded punter in football for a reason. Pinned 3 punts inside the 6-yard line.
Yeah.
I mean, again, all
3 phases.
Mike McDonald, even in their acquisitions. I even think about the Rashid Shaheed trade. Yeah. Right? And he had 3 returns for touchdowns, and he made some big plays on offense throughout this run. Even that, where it's just like, we just need one more guy with a little bit of juice and a kick returner, right? And a guy, of course, Kubiak is familiar with from New Orleans last year.
From New Orleans, for sure.
But, I mean, Seattle, John Schneider, like you mentioned, they left no stone unturned in building this roster, whether it was first-round picks, late-round picks, free agents, Darnold, trades. They left no stone unturned in building the best team in football this year.
The Seattle Seahawks were the best team in the NFL, and they were crowned Super Bowl champions. Anytime that those two things line up, it's obviously the season that needed to be. So congratulations to Seahawks fans. Congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks. Congratulations specifically, PFF alumni, Michael Byrne, who's on staff there with the Seattle Seahawks, now getting a ring. Shout out to Michael for that. But yeah, it was just such a fun season. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us from the preseason analysis and the preseason shows all the way through this final review of the last game in the Super Bowl. We really appreciate you guys rocking with us each and every week whenever you were able to tune in. Obviously, the fun does not stop here. We go full team building mode. We got the Combine in a couple of weeks, free agencies a couple of weeks after that, and then, of course, we're marching towards the 2026 NFL Draft, where we will analyze and break down how you can build these teams like Howie Roseman and John Schneider have been able to do over the last couple of years. For everybody behind the glass producing the show, for Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching the PFF NFL show. We will see you guys later this week.